that need to be kept safe. We are striving to protect this unique biodiversity through the jurisdictional approach to produce sustainable palm oil for the whole of Sabah state in East Malaysia. WWF Malaysia's contribution to the jurisdictional approach is a program called Living Landscapes Program, and there are 3 pillars. The first pillar, protect. We are working with governments in protected area like Tau Hills Park, Ulu Kalumpang Forest Reserve, to try to protect this important area for wildlife so that they can thrive.
There is a nationwide goal to maintain at least 50% of Sabah's under forest cover, as well as Sabah policy to establish about 30% of the state as totally protected areas. And Sabah has taken extra steps to try and get 100% RSPO production by 2025.
And then secondly, it's the produce. We are working with companies like Sawit Kinabalu to see how we can drive conservation and at the same time sustainability.
Perubahannya RSPO dibilang orang menjaga alam sekitar, dilarang membuat pembakaran terbuka, dan dilarang membuang sampah merata-rata tempat.
Finally, under the restore component, we are working with Sabah Soft Foods, working to plant trees to try to connect corridor that leads to 2 large forest landscapes.
Harapan saya untuk terutamanya kawasan Wilayah Koridor ini agar dijaga sepenuhnya lah demi untuk kehidupan liar sejagat, dan ianya juga amat penting bagi kita menjaganya sebab kehidupan liar ini adalah khazanah negara bagi kita.
Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening to you, wherever you are. Welcome to today's webinar. My name is Max Donisius. I'm the manager for the Business and Industry Engagement in the Sabah Landscapes Program, WWF Malaysia. I'll be the moderator for today's webinar. And in today's webinar, this is the last of 4 series of webinars organized by WWF-Singapore in collaboration with WWF Malaysia. The topic for today's webinar is the Living Landscapes Approach, Progress and Lessons from Sabah. So you may ask, what is a living landscape? Here's how it was explained to me when I asked the same question to a senior colleague of mine a few years back. So he said, close your eyes and visualize a building, a big land area where you see people, you see rivers, you see thriving businesses, you see wildlife and its habitat. He said, that is a living landscape. So a living landscape approach is basically teaching us to use, to share and to manage resources in a manner that we have a balance between economic development and protecting our diversity. But before we start, let me do a bit of housekeeping. All attendees will be on mute, but you still can interact with us via the chat box or the Q&A function. And this webinar will be recorded and shared with all registrants post-event. Now, back to today's webinar. We are very privileged to have 5 speakers to share the initiatives they are doing here in Sabah, its progress and lessons learned from such initiatives. I will introduce them before each of their presentations. So today's agenda will start with an opening remarks, followed by the 3 pillars, that's the protect, produce, and restore. And then we'll have a Q&A session at the end. So to kickstart the webinar, let me first invite Dr. Faisal Muhammad Noor, the project leader for Sabah Landscapes Program, WWF Malaysia, to deliver his opening remarks. if you could open your video and unmute your mic, Dr. Faisal, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Max, and thanks for inviting me in this fourth webinar. And first of all, I would like to thank you all our important guests that is participating today. In this talk is Mr. Frederick Coogan from CCF, Chief Conservation Officer, Forestry Department, and we have Nazlan from Sawit Kinabalu, and also Mr. Ram. Appreciate you joining us today. And I think, yeah, I feel a bit nervous because it feels like this webinar is a new tools that we socializing and disseminating our message, and this under this pandemic. So anyway, let me start by, I hope like everyone is okay out there. And yeah, before I start talking about this slide here, I would like to, my name is Faisal. I'm the program leader of Sabah Landscape Program. The Sabah Landscape Programs is a new program under WWF Malaysia Sabah office. Our aim is to support the achievement of the Sustainable Development Goal by integrating the three main core pillars that we're working on in Sabah, which is we addressing highly on the production, sustainable productions of agriculture, and we focus on oil palm productions. And we also focus on the restorations of open and degraded unproductive forest land. We also working on the protections, mainly on trying to protect and the wildlife populations in Sabah. So before I start anything, I like to define to you what is the meaning of the living landscape. So the living landscape is simply, it's about balancing on the competing land use demands that is best for the people and planet. So implementing the living landscape requires a high level of partnerships and coordinations. That's the key to achieve a successful living landscape approach. And this requires to have full integrations between stakeholders to share their capacity and in managing land use responsibly. So yeah, so what I'm trying to talk to you today is I'm trying to pick up like topics that to make you understand how do we implement this living landscape approach by using a specific example of oil palm. Because oil palm is, as we know, is one of the most controversial crops here, and is a major driver of land use change in Sabah. So I would like to use that example. So palm oil, as we understood or we know, so Malaysian know, is the most produced, consumed, traded vegetable oil. The graph here is showing it to you that in the last I don't know, since 1961 to 2014, you can see like exponential drastic increase of the palm oil vegetable oil productions, where oil palm has reached 200 million tons in 2014. Global consumption, Asia is around 61%, and it's also there's a steady rising pattern trend in the United States. There since 2015 that oil palm has increased about 51.4%. So this is just to bring you context how big is the global market for oil palm. That it was estimated around 62 billion in 2019, with production reaching 73 million metric tons, which is this is contributing about 40 billion ringgit to Malaysian gross domestic product in 2019. Next slide. Yeah, so if you look at this slide, what I'm trying to, the message I'm to say here, oil palm is a very big commodity business in the world. And I just showed to you that how big is the volume that is produced and demanded in the world. There's one thing that people out there need to understand, that 85% of this global commodity is actually produced between only two countries, which is Indonesia and Malaysia. So you can say that oil palm global impact is small, as it's only utilized 6% of suitable cropland But in a local level or in local impact oil palm, as you can see the pictures, and you realize that most of our lands is also, as in Sabah, you will see at the moment we stand around 1.7 million hectares of oil palm. That takes 22% of our land has been converted into monocrop. So oil palm plantation is a major driver of deforestation in Southeast Asia, I must say, but not in a global scale. So it leads to peat degradation, biodiversity loss, forest fire, and range of social issues. But as we know as well, oil palm is also a major driver of economic growth and a source of alternative fuel, as I mentioned just now. So studies, I can include some studies that suggest that palm oil has played a very small role in global forest loss. However, one study suggested that palm oil is responsible for around very small 0.22% of global tree loss, but the local impact of it is more significant. Next slide, Sulin. So what do? We WWF and with our partners in Sabah possess this unique position to make a difference. Pictures of to show to the global community. We know that in the last 10 years that the market for oil palm shift, as Europe now I think it was only 60% or 14% utilize the imports of oil palm. It used to be 23% in 2009 if I think, but now it's shifted to China. As you can see from the map here, China alone is consumed 21% of the global palm oil produced with India. So we see this new opportunity that also there's a new awareness happening in Asia. For instance, like there's a public awareness of palm oil deforestation issue in China increased from 7% in 2019 to 31% in 2020. So people start aware, and like, you can see this flyers there, say how to be forest positive consumers. You can see all this flag species there and written in Mandarin, and and we also engage with the buyers. It's there, in our work. So in Indonesia as well, 24% rise in online searches for sustainable goods in Indonesia over the past 5 years. And what we do here is, since we see the potential, we with ASPOL, a team that we work on, we call as in Sustainable Oil Palm Oil Link, that we focus on working on linking production and consumer focus to China and India market, trying to build bridge from sustainable productions to sustainable consumptions. Next slide, please. So we are also learning to see how the living landscape approach will work in the Sabah context. We believe we're the pioneer. And why we're doing this? Because we as you heard that I'm saying that Sabah stand on 1.7 million hectares of land under oil palm. That is close to 22% of our land mass. But apart from that, we still have almost 50% of Sabah still under forest cover. We still have this beauty that our plan is to have a harmonized oil palm that can produce on sustainable landscape. So we WWF work in Sabah, and we have come up with about 6 landscape with 3 priority landscape that we focus our work in the next 5 years, which is Tawau landscape, the red one, Tabin, yellow, and Lower Sugut in upper north of Sabah. And we are supporting the living. We are implementing the living landscape approach, where we focus on intervention work on the ground, on restorations. I think Mr. Ram can explain to you more about the restoration work that we're working in Sabah Southwood, to linking important wildlife corridors, establishing wildlife corridors. And we also supporting the JCSPO initiatives in Sabah, is the jurisdictional certification sustainable palm oil in Sabah, where the state government recently just reinforced that we all need to work together and come up with certified sustainable palm oil for Sabah. And as I mentioned just now, it's we also strengthening and trying to improve, trying to work on linking production and consumption in China to link this sustainable buyers and consumer. So we hope that in the next 5 years, we'll be able to fully implement the living landscape. Then it can be upscaled into the state level. And we also hope that we can see that the GCSPO is functioning, that we will reach the targets of 100% RSPO certified by 2025. And we can have also show how restoration, production, and protection of wildlife can be harmonized on the landscape level. I think that's all from me. I hope that explains, to give you some brief information about what we're doing and what is the living landscape. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Dr. Faisal. An excellent context of the living landscape. Next, let me invite Mr. Fred Coogan, the Chief Conservator of Forest, Sabah Forestry Department, to share about the work that they're doing with regards to the protect pillar. So if you could open your video and unmute your mic, Mr. Fred, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you, Max, for the introduction. Can we share the slide? Is it sharing? Huh? Yeah. Yeah. I think a lot has been described in the video that has been played earlier. Probably summary of it. But basically, I think what Dr. Faisal has mentioned in relation to the living landscape, it is about balancing land use. So what are we doing here in Sabah with regards to protect, the pillar and protect? And I think it is a common knowledge to all, to our partners, to everybody, even to the public, that I think Forestry Department has that following vision, policy. Next slide. Of which our vision is towards realizing sustainable forest management. Okay, when this is the vision, of course, vision is that we must have effective plan and so forth. And I think there's a lot of question that has been put onto me, even Forestry Department. Why are we entering into oil palm sector? But basically, I think we see that being in the Forestry Department, having done so much conservation work for Sabah, I think we have a role to play in terms of contributing our conservation efforts towards benefiting the sector itself. Yeah. And what has been mentioned by Dr. Faisal earlier is that we have about 1.7 million hectares of oil palm that has been established. If you look at the slide here, most of the oil palm landscape are within the white area, the color white. But we do have about 52% that has been already protected by law, by law, as forest reserve or other protected areas. So I think this is an achievement that can be conservation, in a way, conservation efforts that we are indeed very serious in terms of having a very rather balanced land use. And what we hope to achieve is that if you look at the whole landscape of Sabah, our forest today in Sabah, we still have about 65% are still forested. And our aim is that having that 65% forested, I think we aspire to identify, for example, what is the best forest ecosystem that need to be protected. Even if we have already have 52% that has been protected. But then again, we have, in the state of Sabah, I think we have already made a commitment that in addition, as part of that forest is 52% that has been protected, we will be identifying, if we have targeted about 30% or about 2.2 million hectares to be protected as totally protected areas. And we have done that since 2007, of which this has increased over time. And at present, we have about 1.9 million hectares, which is about 26%. And we still have about remaining about 300,000 hectares to achieve. And how do we do that? I think thanks to the jurisdictional certification, Certified Sustainable Palm Initiative, we are looking at the whole forested landscape and looking at identifying where are the high conservation value forests and identifying where are the best areas that need to be protected. Of course, connectivity and corridors are one of the important criteria that are being looked into. I think this is also very much relevant to the Living Landscape project. And by doing this exercise, we are looking at rationalizing, rationalizing what are the forest land use. So there will be land swaps here and there in order to make sure that the future protected areas or totally protected areas are all connected in a way. Yeah. So if you look at this slide, most of the totally protected areas are either green, red, and so forth. They're quite rather fragmented. And we hope to achieve that they're more connected. They are all connected in a way. I think this is important if you look at the whole landscape as a whole. So we are coupling all this effort with the oil palm landscape. So I think this is, besides having protected, besides having to protect identified protected areas, I think part of our mission is also to ensure that whatever other practices, even within the forestry sector, and are based on sustainable practices. And we are now looking into mainstreaming conservation into other sectors like palm oil. I think this is of no, I think this common knowledge to all, whereby it is a necessity, whereby in terms of any development, I think mainstreaming conservation is way forward. And I think this is what we are trying to achieve here in order to balance out and then to make sure that we have protected areas that are fully functioning and of course benefiting the other sectors, especially like oil palm. And with regard to oil palm initiative, I think you have heard even in the video that we have already initiated the Sabah jurisdictional certified sustainable palm oil. I think this we have started this since 2015. It takes a while in order to get into to the level of achievement that we have had today. And like what have been mentioned earlier, that I think the state government has reinstated its commitment, even on the implementation of that jurisdictional certified sustainable initiative, whereby the aim is to trying to achieve certification on all the state at that state level. And I think our main focus is on the smallholders. And as of now, if you look at about 1.7 million hectares, about 1.3 million hectares are actually the plantation estates. I think they are quite, they are in a way, with the proper guidance, they will have the capacity to move forward to the certification. But on the smallholders, I think there's still effort that need to be done. And I think this is one of the objective of this initiative, whereby to help these smallholders towards certification. So eventually, what we hope to achieve is that towards the end of 2025, we would be able to certify the whole oil palm landscape in Sabah. And so what are the achievements to date? I think this is just a snapshot. We have started this in 2000, the target is 2025. And of course, this is what I've mentioned earlier is that the initiative is looking at coupling conservation with the landscape, which I've described earlier. This is basically to ensure that we have a balanced land use. We're looking at ensuring that about 6 million metric tons of CPO of Sabah are certified under this initiative. And of course, when we talk about certification, it is for both RSPO and MSPO certification. And by doing so, we are looking at several activities in terms of goals, of course, very much based on RSPO the principles or even criteria, ensuring that the high conservation value forests or even high carbon stock depends on how this can be implemented, achieved. Okay, and of course there must be zero conflict in oil palm producing landscape, and of course, as I mentioned earlier, strengthening of the smallholders. So all this with the objective is to transform the Sabah palm oil production and supply chain, halting deforestation best possible, restore ecosystem that is equally important, and definitely securing sustainable livelihoods. So I would like to very briefly, I think the benefits is basically through this initiative, what we hope to achieve is that it will help in a way increase price yield per hectare in terms of the smallholders. It will definitely improve Sabah's economies in terms of better access to premium market, improve livelihood, improve our competitiveness, because I think Sabah is too small to compete in terms of size, of governance. So I think we have the position in order to demonstrate on how this sustainable palm oil as a state that can be implemented. And of course, what is unique in Sabah, even under the jurisdictional approach, is that there is an active involvement from the government side, government sector intervention. I think this is very important because a lot of issues that has been addressed will require government intervention, from forestry, even from the lands, from agriculture, and so forth. So I think this is one of the unique arrangement whereby the committee itself comprises about 15, 5 from NGOs, social environment NGO, 5 from the industry themselves, and 5 from the government. I think that provides the equal balance. And of course, by doing so, I think we are addressing the cost effectiveness, because I think it's very expensive. We don't expect the smallholders themselves individually to get certified, but we look at a statewide basis. So, and this is how we structured. I will not dwell on this too much, but then again, just to mention here that we have already established a committee, even to the point of appointing the secretariat manager, and there are now 2 officers that are running the unit, of which they are responsible to serve as secretariat, hopefully eventually, because the ultimate aim is to come up with the independent entity. And this secretariat is now providing the services required to all the members, the 15 members, especially to the government officers, on how this initiative is to be implemented. And of course, these are the setup, and then some of the key achievements I think we have done with HCV. Sooner or later, we will be, if not of the COVID, I think we will be having a stakeholder consultation on the HCV, because this is a very important map, for example, zero map that will be used as a guidance for future development of oil palm or even other commodities in the state. And of course, we have, as I mentioned earlier, we have established a permanent secretariat. Acting director, secretary were appointed, and we are now looking at further implementation, even looking at future support from funders in order to implement the action plan. So I think I will stop there for the time being. I think this is very briefly that what Forestry Department is doing in terms of protect the forest, the ecosystem, having a balanced land use, and what are the mechanisms in place in order to ensure that Sabah Jurisdictional Certified Sustainable Palm Oil Initiative is being implemented. So I think with that, thank you very much. I will pass the mic to Max. Thank you.
Many interesting points you mentioned, Mr. Fred. Thank you. I would like to invite the next presentation, which is about the restore pillar. So this presentation will be done by Mr. Nazlan Muhammad, the Sustainability Manager of Sawit Kinabalu Group. If you could unmute your mic, Mr. Nazlan, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. Oh, sorry, Max. Correction, I'll be presenting on the produce partner. So hi everyone, my name is Nazlan Muhammad, and I'm the Sustainability Manager for Sawit Kinabalu Group. And I'll be presenting a slide on the sustainable palm oil production, specifically maybe on the Sawit Kinabalu perspective. Next slide, please. So first, I just like everyone to know a little bit about us. Sawit Kinabalu is the Sabah state government wholly owned company, and we are the premier investment up to Sabah. Next slide. We are the largest oil palm plantation. It's a government-linked company in Sabah, divided into 4 regions, this West Coast, Sandakan, Lahara, Kutau region. And we are currently, our land bank around 70,000 hectares. And most of our plantation is a conversion from different crop like cacao, tapioca, and whatnot. And our business is not limited to oil palm plantation. We also have other crops, livestock, integration, sustainable beef production, even a property development, and we will venture into new businesses as required by the state government. And next slide. And our company vision, mission, core values, and goals has the sustainability principle and concept as the core of the company. And basically, sustainability is everything in what we do in Sawit Kinabalu. Next slide. Next slide. Our sustainability framework is in Sawit. It's aligning the sustainability pillars, the 3 pillars, people, planet, profit, to the sustainable development goals. Next slide. And these are our current and also future certification. And I wanted to highlight is what Tuan Frederick has presented before, that Sawit Kinabalu is also the permanent member for the Sabah JCSPO. Next slide. These are the 12 management policy as the commitment towards sustainable production. This also shows that our commitment to continuous improvement in our sustainability performance. Policies apply to Sawit Kinabalu Group and all its subsidiaries. And for those actually interested to download, the document is actually publicly available in our website. So the first pillar is profit, or some say prosperity. We want to instill a culture, integrity, and operational excellence, and we want to adopt leading technology. Next slide. Harvesting mechanization. We have introduced a machinery in an area that is suitable and to improve the productivity and to reduce the hard labor work. Next slide. We also have introduced a mechanization in manuring and weeding. And next slide. And of course, under this profit pillar, water is very crucial for the farm, and we have our water conservation strategy to improve the yield. And we found out that this strategy can improve our yield up to maybe 12 to 14%. Next slide. We have also won the National Highest Yield Plantation Award from 2015, 2016, and 2017, 2018. These are the recognition given to our estate in Tawa, being the highest yield estates. And next slide. The next pillar is about people, is about respect and uphold the fundamental human rights, and also to provide safety and health working environment. We have activities on our estates and mill. You conducted regular joint consultation meetings, second consultation. And of course, this is way before the pandemic. If you can see, none of them are actually wearing a mask. And yeah, sports activities too. Next slide. We also provide learning infrastructure for the kids, our workers, and there's a true story, particularly in this community learning center. Some of these kids have been actually able to extend their studies to the university level in their country of origin, which is Indonesia. So that's a success story from this CLC. And we also provide mosques and churches in our estate, conducive quarters for the staff and workers. The workers we have, next slide. The workers we have a very nice semi-detached workers quarters. This is the new standard in Sawit Kinabalu. Not all are having this very nice looking semi-detached, but we are moving towards that. The next pillar is on the planet. We want to promote and protect the environment. Next slide. We introduce a cattle integration in our estate. And we have found that the cattle integration has reduced the use of chemicals in our estates around at least 25%. Next slide. We have Turning Waste to Wealth project. The introduction of biogas plant in our mills contributes to a reduction of GHG emission. As you can see, at least 16,000 tons of so far have been reduced from our the biogas plant. On the protect, conserve biodiversity and ecosystem, As a group, we have almost 9,000 hectares of conservation areas. Next slide. And that is around 12 to 13% of our land bank. These conservation areas is consisting of HSCVs, riparian buffers, forest buffers, wetlands, wildlife corridors, whatnot. And the largest conservation area is in our Sungai Pin Conservation Area, which is a private land under commercial land title. That's around almost 2,700 hectares. And we have met the decision to set aside an area for conservation in 2003. Next slide. And we work with all the relevant parties to make this happen. Start with government, SFD, NGOs like WWF, Pongo Alliance. Even we work with a community group like COPEL to work to make this happen. And we believe that this area has high potential in forest connectivity. Next slide. And to support wildlife corridor in Lower Kinabatangan, as you can see from the map here, as the largest conservation area on private land is ours, the green color. And we hope that our move will also encourage the others to join this effort to connect the Gomantong Forest Reserve and Pinsupu Forest Reserve and all the way to Segaliut Lokan Forest Reserve on the left. Our goal is to be the model for any plantation company in Sabah to actually pledge having a conservation area in their estates. So since 2003 until now, the conservation team in Sungai Pin Conservation Area has planted more than 500,000 of trees. Next slide, you can see this is the first project that we kick off in 2003 with WWF. Next slide. This is the overview, aerial view since 2004 to 2021. And this is the latest aerial view in 2021. So moving forward, in 2017, the move was strengthened with the signing of MOU with Sabah Forestry Department under the EU Red Plus project. Next slide. That is tackling climate change through sustainable forest management. And we have agreed to set aside initially only 2,500 hectares of land in this MOU. And to date, we already have like 2,632 hectares in this area. And this project is the collaboration with European Union under the EU Red Plus initiative. Next slide. The responsibility of both parties in the MOU. We have a very strong support given to us from Sabah Forestry Department. Thank you again to Fred and the team, especially the team leader, Datin Rosila and the team. And next slide. Okay, this is the commitment for Sawi Kinabalu Group on conservation and forest restoration through the signing and handover conservation area management plan. The signed by our group managing director, Tuan Bacho, and witnessed by CCF, Tuan Fred. And from the camp exercise, we discovered that some species, mammals, are very vulnerable and endangered, like the orangutan, Bornean gibbon, proboscis monkey. And our previous wildlife survey was conducted in 2014. And the recent one is 2019 by SFD. And we're going to continue to do this. And hopefully we actually can improve the species, or at least the population in our area. Next slide. One of the special project achievement of this project is establishment of orangutan bridges. The lower part of the photos there. We work with Pongo Alliance in setting up the bridges, and we were told that from their experience, sometimes it will take years for the bridge to use by orangutan. However, in our case, it only took us like 7 months for the orangutan to trust the bridge, and we have evidence that these bridges have been regularly used. We set up a camera trap at the end of the bridge. Next slide. For birds, we have found 104 species in our area, and 8 of it is actually under the IUCN Red List, and 28 is under the Sabah Protected Species. For plant diversity, we have 95 families of plant, and 22 are listed in the IUCN Red List, and 32 are protected plant species. For insect, this is some of the photos of the endemic trees in our area, the plant species. Ficus tree and very huge gaharu tree on the right hand side. So insect diversity, as reflected by the Shannon Index, the insect diversity in our area is moderately high as compared to other forest reserve. Ours is actually at the, you can see from the graph, ours is actually at the very right corner, Sungai Pin, and yeah, it's actually very significantly high. And some of the insects photos, and some are very looking interesting. Next slide. Next slide. You can see that on top left corner, there's like a man face, Elvis Presley face. Some of the photos, activities that we conducted in our conservation area, a lot of awareness training. We also involve women, the community, on tree planting, CSA stock training by SFD. Next slide. The visit by the EU ambassador and Her Excellency in 2016. So this is the latest project under the WWF Living Landscape approach through their protect, reduce, and restore pillars. Next slide. We call this project is a Bagahat Wildlife Corridor project, and we are in the process of getting the board approval for the project. So basically, the objective of this project is to reduce human-elephant conflict by having an integrated electric fencing, reduce crop losses due to elephant conflict, and increase awareness among plantation workers and the community by 2025. We will also restore the area to make it conducive for our elephant. And we know that elephants are using the riparian habitat along Sungai Iban to travel between Tabin Wildlife Reserve and Selabukan Forest Reserve. As conclusion, in Sawit Kinabalu Group, we always believe that palm oil should be produced sustainably without causing deforestation. The conversion of natural ecosystem, environmental degradation, or harming of wildlife, we would like to thank our partners, the NGOs, all the NGOs, WWF, Pongo Alliance, that also believe the oil palm ban will lead to a bigger catastrophic deforestation, as anything we replace with oil palm or palm oil will need to much more land to grow on. Sustainability is about meeting the needs of the present without compromising the ability of the future generation to meet their own needs. And with the recent announcement on the Sabah JCSPO, it gives me the satisfaction that I'm now not only supporting my company, but also supporting the state government. It is a new challenges for us in Sabah, but it is a good challenges that I'm very much looking forward to. I hope that we all can achieve it together. Thank you. Back to you, Max.
Thank you, Mr. Nazlan. Of course, my apology, Mr. Nazlan, your presentation was actually, yes, produced. And very inspiring presentation. You mentioned a few things that you're doing on the ground, good initiatives. Well done. So the next presentation is now on Restore Pillar. This will be a joint presentation by Mr. Ram Nathan, Senior Manager on the Environment and Conservation for Sabah Softwoods Berhad, and Dr. Cheryl Chia, the Elephant Conservation Manager, Sabah Landscapes Program. Their presentation is on the restoration work and wildlife corridor in the Sabah Softwoods. If you could open your video and unmute your mic, Mr. Ram, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon. I'd like to share the human-elephant conflict and how we mitigate ocean, sharing Sabah's experience. Next slide, please. This is the map of Sabah. You can see that Sabah Sobat Berhad, we call it short SSB. We have two parcel of land in the district of Tawau. Okay, the plantation is well established since 1974. It's about 45 years already. In 70% owned by Yayasan Sabah Group. Yes, we do operate our businesses by the 3 P's: people, planet, and profit. Our land bank area, the first one, Brumas block, is about 40,000 hectares, about 28 kilometers. Other one is a Kalabakan, about 20,000 hectares. Okay. Our main business is oil palm. We have about 30,000 hectares with 2 CPO mill operating 195,000 capacity. And we do have tree plantation, about 18,000, and with a chip mill for processing chips. And then out of the 60,000 hectares, we do set aside 12%, about 7,000 hectares for conservations, mainly for biodiversity and ecosystem. It's good that the management of Sabah made a structured commitment whereby we can always develop so-called the hilly area marginal for business like oil palm trees. But planting is one thing, but maintaining is very difficult. So in the long run, put our footstep down, saying that we will keep aside the 10,000 hectares for conservations. Next slide, please. Our tree plantation has been certified with FSC since 2007, and oil palm in the mill since 2016, for MSPO. Next slide, please. These are the biggest challenge, the impact on human-elephant conflicts. We've been having these elephants since in early 2000s to 2003, whereby when we accelerated oil palm plantations to start in Kalabakan. But now, these elephants more or less 30 or 20 become like a PR from resident to Sabah Sohud. Okay. I think the main reason for this elephant remain because we have a diversified crops, we have oil palm and trees, and second thing, our land bank area is more gentle compared to the neighboring plantations. So elephants, of course, we also have good PR, we are good people, we take care of the elephants. Next. These are some of the impacts we've been encountering it. We know that elephants like shrubs, bugs. Yes, they do chew our plantation trees like acacia, which is high in glucose. They also go to our chip mills. Some people say they're doing their QC, quality controller, they're checking our wood chips. You know, young palm damages, okay? And these are wooden structures, usually contractors do that. They tend to be destroyed by elephants. In a way, I said destroyed because of the dogs. They are rearing the dogs because of the protecting their properties. Here, signboards, they don't like zincs. Reflects the, I don't know, they reflect, I mean, that's Dr. Cheryl, why they are damaging the things. Okay, next slide, please. The crop damages, before I come to touch on this slide, the damages since 2004 to 2018, we had a loss of about 4.4 million. Okay, I will highlight that in the graphical form. Okay, to address this human-elephant conflicts, we've been working together with WWF Malaysia since 2012 by surveying the elephant movements. Okay, for managing human-elephant coexistence, and then establishing the wildlife corridor. It's not easy, but thanks to the experts, they put their concrete evidence, research findings. We are about to put these corridors so that it links the two forest reserve, the Ulu Sagama with the isolated Ulu Kelampang. And to support the movement of elephant, we also put GPS coloring. We bought about, I think, 4 units. I think we have 2. So it helped us in the long run. I will show you, highlight them in the other slides. Okay, we also established other corridors in the southern part. Basically, this also to assist the neighboring plantations. By having this corridor, by putting out fencing, we reduced our costs by sharing the cost with the neighboring plantation. One in Kalabakan, one with near Brumas with Bentawasa. Next slide, please. Just like other producers or planters, early days when you see an elephant, the best thing is translocate, pindah gajah. So yes, we did that. We spent about almost about 33K, I think, or more than that, I think, to translocate about 6. Early days, the cost was high, but later on, the cost was because the facility that we have to assist them to translocate. And of course, the trenches looks good, but mind you, it's difficult to manage. Once rains in our area, it's back to square one. Okay, tutup dengan tanah, and then the elephant just walk through. And it's so costly to manage it. Of course, night patrolling in the sensitive area and online, putting up pelita or cameras near the nursery especially. Next slide, please. Yes, elephants tend to, irritated or disturbed whenever they hear noises. But then they're not a long run solutions. So the first time they hear, yes, but 3 or 4 times when you hear the same noise, and they said maybe macam lagu lama lah, macam you said nothing. Okay, we use chainsaws. So all these short-term measures, we've been practicing it, and then gradually we're working together with the experts, with the relevant government agencies, and then we have come up with a long-term mitigation measures. Next slide, please. Yes, this working with WWF Malaysia, they have given us the maps, the coloring, the movement of elephant. You can see the small marbles in different colors. These are the different groups of elephants. And they did show to us, our land is yellow in color. So just for you, the Brumas, yellow. The red color is the wildlife corridor, about 14 kilometers. You can see that most of the elephant movement is from up to down southwest in a cyclic movement. Okay. Next slide, please. Yes, earlier days, just like other plantations, we take care of our crops. Every estate, they go for the FFP production. So what do we do? We fence up their own territories. But later on, we realized that this becomes like a bottleneck, a stress to the elephants. So now we have come up with a joint effort with other agencies, Forestry Department, they come and check, Wildlife Department, elephant, and WWF Malaysia. So now we agree that we only fence up the young plantation. Those are less than 6 years old. Okay. So basically, housing areas, newly planting areas, and replanting areas, we have fenced up. Okay. Next. This is the establishment of the wildlife corridors. Okay. I'd like to thank that time still Dr. Yogi, who has put so much time with his team. WWF coming over, knocking the door of Sabah Sobut, telling us, okay, the corridors, why it has to be here, and with some scientific findings. And this also allows me to convince the management, my senior management team, to show that corridors is necessary. Okay, not only to safeguard our crops, but also to link the isolated Kulit Lompang to Hulu Segama. By having this, we managed to have some benefits to the wildlife. We alleviate extinction. We avoid inbreeding. We also make no blockages movement paths. Okay, and this location of this corridor also too, in the ideal, it's a good place because of the not hilly area. You can see that we do set aside a bit of land, not up to the boundary, but in between, because this is the ideal gentle area. There's a lot of water available for rivers. Okay, so it meets our requirement also for these corridors. And this corridor is about 14 kilometers, and it's about 1,067 hectares. On the hilly area, we put a widened width, about 800 meters. In the flat area, about 400. This opportunity loss, some of the costs maintaining of the wildlife corridor for the elephants, human-elephant conflict. We put one aside of tree plantations. If we maintain it, there's an economic value of 20 million we can generate from these plantations. Okay, but the management is committed to protect all the iconic species. Okay, next slide, please. These other corridors we have put in is about 80,000 hectares. 80 hectares. They also have an economic value if you plant oil palm of 4.5 million, but we put aside. Okay, this also is a boundary between Sabah and Bentawasan and this one Sabah. I think Dr. Sharon. And this also is an effective wildlife corridor. Oil palm, that time we are planting is coming to 2 years old now. It's coming 2 to 3 years old. And we have planted native species, larang, binawang, and other pioneer species. So these trees in future, we can harvest, have some commercial value, because by then the oil palm will be more than 7 years old. And by time the elephants movement will be freely can move around, less damages to oil palm. So this kind of concept we have put aside. Thanks to WWF Malaysia for working together with us. Next slide, please. Setting aside the area of 1,000 hectares worth of 20 million, we have to restore it with native species so that becomes a natural habitat between Lusagama to Lukalumpang through our corridor. So we have planted about 59,000 hectares since 2014. To develop this 10-year plan, we also developed a 10-year management plan. Hope you can see it. Okay. Then we have a structure and commitment for management. We also extend a copy to Sabah Forestry Department saying that we will maintain and develop this area mainly not only for wildlife, elephant, but for other wildlife too, like clouded leopard, sunbeam, and so forth. Okay. Now it's about 7 years old. So in this graph, you can see that since 2014, when we started, and then up to April 21, we have planted about 60,000 cases of native species and fruit trees. Okay, but mind you, whenever you plant, there are a lot of damages. Okay, these are some of the challenges we are encountering it. And we also have to convince the management, especially the board of directors. We're putting up land, 1,000 hectares. I see trees, and I see elephants, and I see a bit so-called bushy, but that's natural habitat. We have to write. So as we go along, we have convincing them, all our board of directors. They even come to a certain extent to plant trees by having a field visit. Next slide, please. Some of the initiative, conservation initiative, we have to enhance biodiversity. We have looked at a garden, fruit garden. We plant bananas, coconut, sugarcane. Upon maturity, we cut and plant in the wildlife corridor. Okay. Now you plant, tomorrow now you don't see it. That fast, the elephants move around very fast. We also made elephant pond. About 8 already, elephant pond. It's very safe, and elephants are making use of it we are allowing them, elephants, to spend more time in the corridors, okay, to minimize human disturbance in the planting sector. We also made some man-made salt licks, about 3 already. We do put up some camera traps and can see some presence of wildlife. Also, we're working with, assisted by Dr. Zaina and Dr. John Payne from Bora on the ficus, on fig trees, to attract more hornbills. Next, please. These are some of the effectiveness of the wildlife corridor. Okay, you can see the brown color is our corridor, and then the circle, the green, we do see orangutan coming on and off. We see the nest. The best time is early in the morning or late in the evening. Some you can see through camera trap, some to the workers. The workers are very good, helping us to show. They're also learning from the staff how to, when you see an elephant or you see orangutan, what are the do's and don'ts. Okay, next. At one time, elephants seemed to be a liability, but now it become like an asset. We do have some domestic tourists coming in, some students from UMS, from Tower schools coming in to participate. They come, they like to see elephant, that's the main thing. So what we do, we'll allow them to plant trees. They buy the seedlings, they want to carry themselves, they want to plant. But we also have our safety rules. You can see on the presentation, on the left hand, we have the do's and don'ts. If you see an elephant, what are things not to be done, or how to stay away from it. Okay, even you can see in the oil palm workers, we're giving them whistle. So semasa, whenever they see elephants, they will whistle. The mandor will whistle to the workers. So by doing that, we will move the workers to adjacent blocks to do other activities until the elephants move. Okay, I think since 2018, we generated about close to 35,000 by inviting these tourists, students coming in to plan, to stay in our cell. And this also offset some of our costs in managing the human-elephant conflict. Next slide, please. This site, oops, battery low. I'll go fast. Okay, for restoration and insurance planting, we spent about planting about 1.8 million. The manpower, patrolling, the defense about 0.95 million. We spent about 2.75 million, apart from the economic value of the tree plantation. Okay, but mitigation measures can be very costly, but addressing this responsibly with commitment will reduce instead of HEC the long term. Okay. Next slide, please. As I mentioned earlier, part of my presentation, you can see we have been collecting data since 2004 up to 2018. 2004, that's about 500,000 average. About 7 years, about 3.5 billion on that. As we go along with the establishment of wildlife corridor and putting up the elder fencing and realignment of elder fencing, the cost of damages have drastically reduced. Okay. Now we're going for replanting in 2019. Okay. Next slide, please. I think this is my last slide. Basically, Sabah Sobut are very committed in mitigating the HEC. Thank you for the human wildlife workshop. It's very fruitful, helpful, because the main drivers, Sabah Wildlife Department, Sabah Forest Department, the deer force coming and participated with the neighboring plantations, putting us sitting together to iron out, to come with a mitigation offer. I like to share with all the planters or growers. Okay, we can always sit together to share, to come with the best, not best, to operate mitigation options. I can show you that this one simple stick, satu batang kayu, one solution, you can easily break. However, you do have few mitigation options. Okay, few sticks, you can hardly break. That's the beauty of it, having these human wildlife workshops to sit together and share. Okay, next slide, please. Thank you. I'll pass the floor to Dr. Cheryl.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Ram. Hello, good. Hi, everyone. So my name is Cheryl. So I hope you all are well and safe. So I'll be presenting about approaches have been taken to coexist with elephants using a landscape approach. So based on Mr. Ram's presentation just now, that he managed to demonstrate that through proper alignment of electric fences and through the corridor, they were able to reduce substantially the cost of the crop damages due to conflict. So besides habitat fragmentation, we noticed that the uncoordinated placement of electric fences has also further exacerbated the conflict situation. So for example, there are neighboring plantations have installed their own electric fences. So if this is not done in a coordinated manner, it actually creates bottlenecks and it prevents elephants to move from one forest patch to another. And based on the picture that you see at the bottom here, is example of a plantation in Sabah that's undergoing the replanting phase. So more specifically, the chipping phase. And we've noticed that a lot of the elephants are increasingly drawn to these areas. So just to share a short footage, you can see these elephants and a few in the background. And this is a chipping machine that cuts the mature palm trees. So based on that footage, we just wanted to show that, so actually since 2013, when we started collaring the elephants, we noticed that in recent years, we found that particularly there's a phenomenon which happened in one of the plantations, whereby these elephants, 3 of our collared elephant groups were actually found to feed in this particular plantation in the eastern part of Sabah. And so our teams were actually curious to find out why these elephants were, increasingly drawn to these areas. So we tried to sample the food that they eaten. So it's actually the elephants were found to feed particularly on the heart of the palm trees that were felled. And so this is because the heart of palm trees are actually fresh and succulent, and in fact they're very sweet. So this is what has drawn the elephants to this area. And in fact, we also observed that these elephants were grown accustomed to this chipping process, whereby whenever this chipping machine starts, the elephants will come out from wherever they are hiding to actually come out and feed on this heart of the palm trees. So this chipping process in itself does not cause conflict. And in fact, we've actually seen that a lot of plantations have allowed elephants to feed in these areas. But the issue happens during the next stage, which is the replanting stage. So that's basically when they start planting young oil palm seedlings, and this necessitates them to actually install electric fences to protect and guard the crops. So WWF has employed 3 strategies to mitigate this conflict situation. So the first one was that we established a multi-stakeholder working group. So this involved stakeholders from the plantation industry that were experiencing conflict, as well as the government enforcement agencies like the Forestry Department, Wildlife Department, and the Sabah Foundation to actually come together to actively implement joint auctions to reduce conflict. And the second one, as I mentioned, that we have actually placed up to 20+ collars on elephant groups so that it can help us to better understand their movements their requirements and use that to provide more informed decisions to these stakeholders. And the third one is actually a project that we've piloted, that is in a piloting stage, whereby we are engaging with this community in the Lahad Datu area in the eastern part of Sabah to better manage the conflict situation through awareness programs and capacity building activities. So Mr. Ram just now presented some of these spatial planning procedures which his company took. So in fact, Sabah Softwoods was actually one of the first few plantations that we engaged with to mitigate conflict. So we approached them and we provide recommendations on areas to realign electric fences. So this is basically where you remove certain fences which are bottlenecks to elephant movement and you place them elsewhere. And to advocate for corridors, which is the 1,000 plus hectare corridor to connect Ulu Kalumpang to the main central forest block. And the third one is that we also provide recommendations for them to only fence certain parts of the plantations which are vulnerable. So this includes young oil palm areas and settlement areas. So thereby allowing elephants access to other parts of the plantation, which for example is the orange area here, the oil palm, matured oil palm areas, and tree plantations. So for example, in Sabah Softwoods is this dark green area here. So since then, we noticed that after working with Sabah Softwoods, that the conflict situation is actually happening at the landscape level. So we wanted to try and approach it using the landscape approach through the working group. So back in 2016, we developed this working group where all these colorful plantations that you see on this map here, we got them on board to actually come up with certain mitigation measures. So through this working group, we were able to get information, for example, like these areas here that are cross-hatched. It shows the locations where there's new oil palm development or areas that will be undergoing replanting. And also we managed to get information on where they place their electric fences. So for example, this would be the areas that are in the red line and areas where they plan to actually place fences. So basically the idea here is to continue to allow elephants to move through their plantation areas so that the elephants movement is continuous and that they're able to move from one forest patch to another. So just very quickly, we actually developed 4 site-specific mitigation measures. So the first one was the one mentioned by Mr. Ram just now, which is an 80-hectare connectivity area. So this corridor was set aside to enable elephants to move through the plantation area that's undergoing oil palm development, so that elephants could enter into these tree plantation areas where the damages were minimal. And also to set aside or to allow elephants to use their riparian area, which is basically their river zones, to enter into this tree plantation area. And similarly, for the areas labeled 2, 3 to 4, there were certain site-specific measures, for example, to allow elephants to go through the river to access the virgin jungle forest, and from there to move on to the central forest block. So, so when this was advocated in 2016, we wanted to know a few years later on whether our mitigation measures have succeeded in allowing elephants to actually move through this landscape, which was undergoing land use change. So we mapped out locations of 2 of our collared elephants. So this is shown by the areas in pink and the areas in blue. So in 2016 was when the working group was established. And in 2018 was when the plantation started adopting all these different mitigation measures. And in 2019 and 2020, you can actually clearly see that after these site-specific measures were adopted, so for example, the 80-hectare corridor and the riparian area here, that the elephants were able to continuously move throughout the whole landscape in the southern part of Sabah. So this basically shows that with proper mitigation measures in place involving factoring in the requirements of elephants, that they can actually continuously move through this landscape even as it goes through land use changes. So from then, we expanded this. So from the Kalapakan landscape in southern Sabah, we expanded this model to the Tabin landscape. So this is the area where Mr. Nazlan was sharing about, where we are working with Sawit Kinabalu to establish a 90-hectare corridor. And also in the southern part of Sabah, bordering Kalimantan, where we're working with our colleagues from WWF Indonesia to actually secure this transboundary corridor area. So this is particularly important to have these corridors as part of our climate mitigation adaptation strategies, because we know that elephants are sensitive to temperature changes and to drought. So by setting aside these corridors, it would allow these elephants to move to areas that are of higher elevation or to larger forest patches in the event of climate change. So this case study basically demonstrates that these plantation companies, we can see a shift in the paradigm of their thinking, whereby more and more plantation companies like Sabah Softwoods and Sawit Kinabalu are playing a bigger role in conservation. And it also shows that coexistence between plantations and elephants is actually achievable using a shared landscape and shared resources, as long as mitigation measures are put in place in the beginning. So this is particularly important because we expect HAC or human-elephant conflict intensity to increase due to the changes in the land use dynamics, and particularly when the protection of forests alone is not enough to guarantee the long-term survival of the species. So definitely through our collaborations with our multi-stakeholders, we know that we need more and more of these plantations to come on board and to support us in this initiative. So I've come to the end of my presentation. I hope you found it insightful. So I want to thank you to all our partners, our collaborators and stakeholders, especially the plantation companies, and also for the government agencies for supporting our initiative. Thank you, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Interesting. Thank you, Cheryl. I heard Mr. Ram said this statement: wildlife is an asset. Wow, excellent. Excellent presentation, Mr. Ram, and also Dr. Cheryl Shah. We have some time for Q&A. So let me first pose a question to Dr. Faisal. You mentioned in your presentation that the living landscape approach is about sharing and managing resources in the landscape. And obviously, you are dealing with many actors in that landscape. You know, the government, the business, local communities, civil societies. And these actors, they have different goals and objectives. So what would be the biggest challenge in implementing a living landscape so far for you, Dr. Faisal?
Yeah, Max, as we know that, you know, this program has only been a year. And when we started we took off in June, I think last year, the MCO was already started. So unfortunately, I cannot really tell you how much that I have learned from trying to implement this on the ground, a real case scenario on the ground. I'm talking about interaction with governmental official, physical meetings, and you know, all these ideas and knowledge that we have about this, and we still not be able to fully 100% socialize and disseminate this idea out there. So yeah, it's a very unfortunate situation we are in, but you know, but apart from that, what I can say is, you see, Nazlan is here, and Tuan Fred is here, Mr. Ram is there. We have managed to actually engage the local state government link company, which is like one of the most strongest government link company. And I hope when the state government is already taking this idea up and practice this on the ground, it make it easier to us to live and to show to others that they should jump on board on this. And hopefully in the third quarters of our work, and I also hope that, because we currently, have a vaccine enrolling and things are improved, I think we can go for, a much higher speed. And so, because this is like learning, we see, this living landscape approach is not going to excel if we're not having a full participations and good coordinations with our partners, because this is all about being a responsible land user on, as you said, on the same landscape. If someone not doing right in the landscape, someone else can tell them, hey, you're not doing right. So it's that kind of coordination that we're expecting in the future. I hope that explained and answered the questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Faisal. Next question I can see from the Q&A question is to Tuan Fred. What would be the government expectation from standard schemes like RSPO and MSPO, and also expectation from the buyers, because this is a very important and interesting initiative state level. Do you foresee the risk of next government coming in and put a stop on the initiative? Mr. Fred.
Thanks, Max, and thank you for anonymous attendee for the interesting question. Well, basically what the state government looks at is that expect from the whole initiative, from the jurisdictional certification initiative, is that we can, in the end, come up with a scheme or our own Sabah scheme that complies with both national, international requirements, and including as well market acceptance. And I think one of the most important aspects from this exercise is that it must be a two-way, okay? While we recognize the importance of complying with the national, international, even market requirements, but I think that is also important for the other parties to recognize what are the effort that has been taken in the state with regards to on how to address the issue or address the concern, areas of concern, for example, deforestation, etc., etc. So, I mean, within the jurisdictional certification initiative itself, we will be coming up with our own interpretation, our own way of how to address it. And I think it is very important that the process of addressing it is recognized. I think this is one of the way forward. If we were to bring on board all the other oil palm plantation in the state certified, because I think it is very important that we relook at what are the standards now and see how best that they can be applied, and what are the alternative approach that we can offer in order to address them. I think this is something which is very important. And of course, when the change of government, I think if we do something which is good for the sector, I think I think this is something that probably any future government may not derail it, because this is something that we hope to help the industry itself, and it is something which is very pertinent, very important for the economy of the state of Sabah. So what we are doing now is actually to assist the sector itself. Yeah. So I hope that I answer the question, but I do see that there are quite a number of other questions with regards to targets, etc., etc. But probably I just want to stop here first, and then okay, back to you, Max. I hope that answered your question.
Thank you, Mr. Fred. Well, we have another 6 minutes. Probably I'll ask the last question to Tuan Nazlan. What would be the biggest challenge for you to bring all farmers to achieve full certification?
Okay, thanks, Max. Wow, that's a very difficult one for me. What would be the biggest challenges? I think in Sawit Kinabalu perspective, it's always about bringing everyone together, and our challenges is on the awareness of our smallholders. For instance, like in our area, West Coast region, we are having the highest numbers of smallholders, that is around 1,000 registered smallholders. Of course, not everyone are active. And the challenges is actually to get everyone in a room to actually give them an awareness, and so that they understand what are the benefits of having accessibility certification like MSPO, RSPO, even the state initiative jurisdictional certification. And how we do it, basically, we conduct a lot of awareness training, and so that they are aware of all these benefits. For instance, we also try to actually speak their language, and most of them are actually very eager to actually improve their livelihood. And how we do it, we show them some simple basic calculation, like on the FAB pricing, for instance. If we implement all this accessibility requirement and all these agricultural best practices, you can actually improve your OER. Like if you improve 1% of OER, that will also contribute for current CPO price, maybe around 45 ringgit per metric ton. So that will actually encourage them to actually come in and join the program. Would that answer the question, Max?
Thank you, Nazlan. Obviously, we have so little time, and yet there are still many more questions. So we will try to get a response from the speakers on this and get back to you. So we have come to the end of this webinar. I'd like to thank everyone for your active participations, especially to all the speakers, Mr. Fred, Mr. Nazlan, Mr. Ram, Dr. Faisal, and Dr. Sharosha, for your presentations and for answering all these questions. Thank you very much, and have a good day. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Max. So
Thank you,
thanks,
everyone.
everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone.